A child lay in the middle of a rain-soaked road, blocking a convoy of armed vehicles. She was 7 years old, crying, desperate. "You have cars and people who listen," she sobbed to the dangerous man who stepped out. "Please, you have to help my mum." Killian Volkav was the most feared mobster in the city. He had 15 minutes to close a deal worth an empire. But what he found in that broken building would destroy everything he thought he knew about the last 3 years of his life. Killian Volkav didn't look up from the contract spread across his lap. 7 pages that would reshape the syndicate's entire eastern operation. The convoy had stopped. 15 minutes. He had exactly 15 minutes to reach the warehouse on Pembroke Street, where Victor waited with an empire's worth of shipping routes and enough impatience to start a war. The SUV went still. Rain hammered the roof like bullets. "Why aren't we moving?" Killian's voice cut through the downpour without rising in volume. His driver, Marcus, shifted uncomfortably. No answer. Killian's jaw tightened. "Marcus." A knock on the window, sharp, urgent. Not Marcus. Desmond stood outside, rain cascading off his shoulders, his face tight with worry. Desmond, who'd taken a knife to the ribs in Prague without flinching, looked uncertain. Killian lowered the window 2 inches. "There's a child, sir, in the road. Move her." "We tried. She—" Desmond's throat worked. "She's refusing, screaming. When Garrett tried to approach, she laid down on the road. She's just lying there, letting the rain—" Killian paused. This was the first time something like this had ever happened to him. He should have told them to handle it, to move her by any means necessary, but despite his cold reputation, Killian couldn't bring himself to leave a child out in the rain. He opened his door. "Let me see," he said quietly. Killian stepped out and walked toward her. She looked weak, fragile. Maybe 7 years old, maybe 8. Dark hair plastered to her skull, dress soaked through. She wasn't moving. For one terrible moment, Killian thought she was dead. Then her chest hitched with a sob. His men formed a semicircle 10 feet back, killers and leg breakers, rendered useless by 60 pounds of misery in a floral print dress. Killian took another step. Water filled his Italian leather shoes instantly. "Hey!" His voice came out rougher than intended. The child's head jerked up. Brown eyes, massive, terrified, locked onto his. She scrambled backward on her palms, slipping, catching herself. "You have cars," she blurted, her words tumbling out in broken gasps. You have big cars and people who listen, and you can help. You have to help, because nobody else is helping, and I don't—" Her voice cracked. "I don't know how to be alone." Something cold slithered down Killian's spine. Not fear. He'd forgotten what fear felt like at 16. This was something else. "Help with what?" he asked quietly, keeping his distance. "My mum." The words barely made it past her chattering teeth. "She slept, and she won't. She did the afternoon sleep, the small one. But it's nighttime now, and she's not waking up." I shook her, and I shouted, "But she's just sleeping. And the neighbors don't answer, and I don't have a phone, and—" "Where?" She pointed down the street with a trembling finger. "Number 42, the one with the broken— with the—" Her face crumpled. Please help. I don't want to be an orphan." Orphan. The word hung in the air like smoke. Killian checked his watch. 12 minutes left. He looked at the child. Really looked. Bare feet blue from the cold. Dress that might have been pink once, now the color of old bruises. And those eyes, Christ, those eyes that had already seen too much and were about to see more. Victor Krasnov could wait. "Show me." Number 42 wasn't a house. The structure leaned left, like it was drunk. Half the roof tiles were missing. The windows were covered with plastic sheeting that flapped in the wind like surrender flags. The front door hung from one hinge. Nobody lives here, Killian thought. Nothing lives here. but the girl was already inside, bare feet slapping against floorboards that groaned beneath even her weight. "Mum's in the back room," she said breathlessly. "The one with the mattress. Hurry, please, hurry." Desmond and Marcus followed Killian in. The smell hit first: mildew, rot, and beneath it, the copper tang of sickness. No furniture except an overturned crate serving as a table. No lights. The back room was worse. No walls, just bare support beams. No bed, only a mattress directly on the floor, stained, sunken. And on that mattress, a woman lay motionless. Killian's heart stopped, then kick-started into a rhythm that felt like violence. He couldn't see her face. She was turned toward the wall, dark hair covering her profile. But his body knew. Some ancient animal part of his brain that existed long before language or logic began to scream. "Ma'am?" Marcus moved forward first, professional and calm. "Ma'am, can you hear? Don't touch her." Killian's voice came from somewhere far away. His feet carried him forward without permission. He knelt beside the mattress and reached out. His hand shook. When was the last time his hand had ever shaken? As he gently turned her face toward him. The world tilted. Clarissa. 3 years dead. 3 years of nightmares filled with twisted metal and ocean depths. 3 years of grief so massive it had calcified into something harder than bone. But here, pale, breathing shallow, fever-flushed, was a ghost, or a miracle, or a trap. His hand moved to his inside pocket automatically, fingers finding the locket he'd carried like a talisman. He pulled it out with numb fingers and opened it. Inside, the photo. Him and Clarissa on a boat. Her laugh caught mid-sound, his arm around her shoulders. The same sharp chin, the same small scar above her left eyebrow from that childhood fall. He looked at the woman on the mattress. Same scar. Twins? His mind grasped desperately. A doppelganger? Some kind of sick joke? But he knew, the way you know anything true and terrible, that this was her. Clarissa Thorne. The woman who was supposed to be fish food in the Atlantic. Clarissa, whom he'd mourned with a bottle of whiskey and 3 bullets he'd put into the chest of the man who planted the bomb on her plane. Clarissa. Breathing. Is she going to die? The child's voice, small and sharp as a needle, punctured his spiral. Is my mum going to die? Mum. Killian's gaze snapped to the girl. He really looked at her now, past the rain and tears, the shape of her nose, the stubborn set of her jaw, the slight tilt of her eyes at the corners. Then the timeline hit him like shrapnel. 3 years. This child was 7, maybe 8. No. Get a medic, he heard himself say. His voice sounded like it was coming from underwater. Now. And nobody... He looked at Desmond, then Marcus, letting all the violence he was capable of flood into his expression. Nobody speaks about this. To anyone. Ever. Desmond's eyes widened slightly. Sir, ever. Marcus already had his phone out. Killian looked back at Clarissa, at her shallow breathing, at the sharp cut of her collarbones through paper-thin skin, at the woman who'd died, at the woman who'd lived, at the woman who'd left him. And beside him, barely reaching his shoulder, stood a little girl who had his dead girlfriend's eyes, and who had just shattered his entire understanding of the universe by lying down in traffic. In his pocket, his phone buzzed. Victor, probably. The deal. The Empire. Killian silenced it without looking. Some things, it turned out, were more important than empires. The fluorescent lights in St. Catherine's Memorial Hospital buzzed. Killian sat in a plastic chair that was too small for his frame, elbows on his knees, hands clasped so tightly his knuckles had gone white. Beside him, the girl, he still didn't know her name, swung her legs, bare heels thumping softly against the chair. Someone had given her a blanket. She'd wrapped it around herself like armor. They'd been waiting 43 minutes. 43 minutes of Killian's mind running wild, trying to land on an explanation that made sense. Clarissa was dead. He'd identified her belongings, the carry-on bag with her initials, the necklace he'd given her, both pulled from the wreckage. The airline had confirmed her seat. The manifest had her name. But corpses didn't breathe. Corpses didn't have children. Children. He looked at the girl sidelong. She was staring at the opposite wall, not crying anymore, just waiting, like she'd had practice. "What's your name?" The question came out rougher than he intended. She glanced at him. Those eyes. Christ, every time he looked at those eyes, something in his chest seized. "Ember. Ember." He tested it. "That's unusual. Mum said it's because I was born fighting." Her voice had leveled out, gone flat. Shock, probably. "The doctors said I wouldn't make it, and I did. So, Ember, like a fire that won't go out." Something hot and sharp lodged itself in Killian's throat. A nurse appeared, clipboard in hand, exhaustion etched into every line of her face. "Family for Clarissa Thorne?" Killian stood. "Here." The nurse's gaze flicked to Ember, then back to him. "The patient needs a blood transfusion, type O negative. We have it in stock, but we need family consent and a signature before we can proceed. Are you her husband?" The lie fell from his mouth, smooth as silk. "I'm her husband." The nurse's eyebrows rose fractionally. She looked at the chart, then at him, then at Ember, clearly doing math that didn't quite add up. But this was St. Catherine's, the part of the city where questions got people killed, so she just handed him the clipboard. "Sign here, here, and initial here." Killian signed in 3 places without hesitation. His handwriting was steady. The nurse took the clipboard back. "She's stable. Severe malnutrition, dehydration, and a fever that spiked to 104, but she's responding to treatment. You can see her once she wakes up. Room 237. How long? Could be an hour, could be 10 minutes. Bodies are unpredictable." She softened slightly. "Your daughter looks exhausted. There's a vending machine on the 2nd floor if she's hungry." "Your daughter?" Ember was already shaking her head. "I'm staying here." The nurse left. Killian sat back down and pulled out his phone. 17 missed calls. Victor, his underboss Marco, his accountant. The deal had cratered, obviously. Victor didn't do late. You either showed up or you declared war, and absence was its own declaration. He typed a single message to Marco. "Handle Victor, whatever it costs." Then he turned off the phone completely. Ember was watching him with an expression he couldn't read. "Are you really going to help my mum?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because she's the only woman I ever loved. Because I thought she was dead. Because nothing about this makes sense, and I need answers more than I need oxygen." "Because you asked me to." Ember studied him for a long moment, then nodded once, like she'd made a decision about him, like he'd passed some test he hadn't known he was taking. They waited. And then the news finally came. She was awake. Room 237 was at the end of a hallway. Clarissa looked smaller in the hospital bed, swallowed by white sheets and monitoring equipment. An IV drip fed clear liquid into her left arm. The heart monitor beeped steadily. Proof of life, mechanical and absolute. She was awake. Killian stopped in the doorway. His body had turned to stone. Those eyes, green-gray like storm water, tracked movement to him. Then to Ember, who'd slipped past him and was climbing onto the chair beside the bed. "Mom," Ember's voice cracked. "You're awake." Clarissa's hand, pale, thin, trembling, reached out to cup Ember's face. "Baby, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry you were scared." The man helped, the one with the cars. Clarissa's gaze slid back to Killian, and for just a fraction of a second, so brief he might have imagined it, something flickered across her face. Recognition? Fear? Then it was gone, replaced by polite confusion. "Thank you," she said softly. for helping my daughter. I don't know how to repay. Clarissa. His voice came from somewhere deep and broken. It's me. She blinked. I'm sorry? It's me. He stepped into the room, and the door clicked shut behind him with a sound like a coffin ceiling. Killian, you're Killian, The words jammed in his throat. We were together for 2 years. You lived in my apartment. You kept stealing my coffee, even though you had your own. You'd fall asleep during movies and deny it. You hated cilantro. You had a scar on your left shoulder from where you fell off your bike when you were 12. He was babbling. Killian Volkav, who'd negotiated with cartel leaders and Russian oligarchs without breaking a sweat, was babbling. Clarissa's face had gone carefully blank. I think you have me confused with someone else. You told me you were taking a flight to Boston, February 14th, 3 years ago, Valentine's Day. He swallowed hard. I wanted to come with you, but you said no. You'd be back in 2 days. The plane went down over the Atlantic. They said, his voice splintered. They said there were no survivors. Something flickered across her face. She looked at Ember, then back at him. When she spoke, her voice was gentle, pitying. Sir, I don't know you. I've never been to Boston. I don't know anything about a plane crash. She paused. I woke up in a hospital 4 years ago. I was pregnant. The doctors said I'd been in an accident, but Her hand drifted to her temple. I don't remember. I don't remember anything before waking up in that hospital room. No family, no name even. They called me Jane Doe until I chose Clarissa because a nurse said I looked like one. Killian felt the ground tilt beneath him. No. You're lying. The words came out flat. Absolute. Her eyebrows rose. Excuse me? You remember. You have to remember. He fumbled in his pocket, pulled out the locket and opened it with shaking hands. He thrust it toward her. Look. That's you. That's us. On the boat in the Keys. You got seasick but wouldn't admit it. You said the water was just disagreeing with you. Clarissa stared at the locket. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she looked up at him, eyes completely empty. That could be anyone. It's you. I don't know you. Each word dropped like a stone into still water. I'm sorry you lost someone. I'm sorry she looked like me. But I'm not her. Killian's hands curled into fists. Every instinct honed over 15 years in the underworld screamed she was lying. The micro-expressions were wrong. The pauses, calculated. She was performing. But why? We used to dance, he said desperately. In the kitchen, at 2 a.m, to that song, the one by I Don't Dance. You made me promise that if anything happened to you, I'd plant a tree, an oak tree. You said oaks live for hundreds of years, and you wanted something that would outlast. I don't know you. Her voice rose, thin and sharp. I don't know anything about promises or trees or... She stopped abruptly. Her gaze had snagged on something over his shoulder. The television mounted in the corner of the room, muted, playing the evening news, splashed across the screen in bold letters. Breaking. Italian mobster Killian Havelock acquires major property in Venice. His own face stared back from the screen. A photo from some charity gala, him in a tuxedo, expression carved from ice. Clarissa's face drained of what little color it had. That's you. Not a question. Her voice had gone dead. You're him. Killian Havelock, She looked at Ember, then back at him. Horror bloomed across her expression. You're a mobster. Clarissa, get out. The words were quiet, lethal. I need you to listen to me. Get out. Louder now. Her hand tightened on Ember's shoulder, pulling her close. Protective. I don't know what kind of game this is, but I would never be with someone like you. A criminal, a killer. Her voice shook. Leave, now, before I call security. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. She was breathing hard now, the heart monitor spiking. You think I'm someone I'm not? Someone stupid enough to fall in love with a mobster? Well, she's dead. And Her voice broke. I'm just trying to survive. Me and my daughter. So please, please, just go. The please did it. Something in the way she said it, broken, real, terrified, cut through everything else. Killian took a step back. His hands were shaking again. I'm not lying to you. Neither am I. They stared at each other across the sterile space of the hospital room. The monitor beeped softly. The fluorescent lights hummed. Killian reached into his coat, pulled out his phone, the burner he kept for emergencies, and set it on the table beside her bed. That phone has one number in it, mine. His voice was rough. If you remember anything, or if you need help, you call it. Clarissa said nothing. He looked at Ember. The girl was watching him with those two old eyes, and Christ, she looked so much like her mother it hurt. And possibly like you, whispered a voice in his head that he violently suppressed. Take care of your mum. Ember nodded once. Killian turned to leave. His hand was on the door handle when Clarissa spoke again. Wait. He froze. She paused, her voice careful. If what you're saying is true, if I really was this person you knew, then you should know something. He turned. She was sitting up straighter now, despite the IV, despite the obvious exhaustion. Her chin was raised, defiant. Your enemies, she said quietly. If they think I'm alive, if they think I matter to you, then my daughter and I are targets now, aren't we? The bottom dropped out of Killian's stomach. He hadn't thought. Yes. The word came out like gravel. Yes, they are. Clarissa closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them again, something had shifted. Some internal calculation had resolved. Then we can't stay here. No. And going back to... She gestured vaguely. To wherever we were living. That's not safe either. No. A long silence. I still don't remember you, Clarissa said finally. I still think you're either lying or mistaken. But I'm not an idiot. If what you're saying is true, if my face has been on your arm in photographs, if people know we were connected, then running away by myself with a 7-year-old isn't going to work. No, it's not. Her jaw tightened. So, what are you suggesting? I have an estate outside the city, 30 acres, security like Fort Knox. You and Ember come with me. Stay there until I figure out who needs to die to make you safe again. How reassuring. Despite everything, his mouth twitched. There she was, that sharp edge he remembered. I'm not asking you to trust me. I'm telling you that this isn't a choice. Not if you want to survive. Clarissa looked at Ember. They had some silent conversation in the way only mothers and children could. Then she looked back at him. If you try anything at all, I'll kill you myself. I don't care how many guns you have or how many men, I'll find a way. Noted. And you'll get us a separate room. Separate wing, if possible. Done. And you'll explain everything, every single detail about who you think I was. Because if I'm going to pretend to be your dead girlfriend to stay alive, I need to know who the hell I'm supposed to be. Pretend. The word stuck in his ribs like a knife. Fine. Clarissa nodded once, decisive. Then we'll come, temporarily, until this, whatever this is, gets resolved. Temporarily, Killian echoed. Liar, he thought. You're never leaving again. But he kept that to himself. They left the hospital at 2 a.m. after Clarissa had been discharged against medical advice, and after Killian had paid off 3 administrators to lose any record of Clarissa Thorne or Jane Doe ever being admitted. 2 SUVs. Desmond drove the first with Killian, Clarissa, and Ember. Marcus and 3 other men followed in the second. Nobody spoke. Ember had fallen asleep against her mother's shoulder within 5 minutes. Clarissa stared out the window at the passing city lights, her face unreadable. Killian watched her from the corner of his eye. She hadn't asked a single question about where they were going. Hadn't protested when he'd had Marcus bring clothes from a boutique he had connections with, sizes that fit perfectly because he still remembered every measurement of her body. Hadn't reacted when Desmond had called him sir and treated him with the deference reserved for people who could order executions. She was thinking, planning. Survivor, he thought. That nurse had said Ember was born fighting, but clearly she'd learned it from her mother. The question that ate at him: was Clarissa running from something or to something? Had she faked her death? Had someone made her fake her death? Or, and this was the possibility that made his blood run cold, was she really telling the truth about not remembering, and someone had made her forget? Too many variables, too many unknowns. The SUV turned off the main highway onto a private road. The gates opened. The Volkav estate materialized from the darkness like something out of a Gothic novel. Stone and glass and deliberate intimidation. 40 rooms, half of which Killian never used. Gardens designed by someone who'd worked for European royalty. A wine cellar worth more than most people's houses. And enough security to repel a small army. The SUV stopped in front of the main entrance. Marcus opened the door. Clarissa stepped out first, carefully, holding Ember against her. The girl stirred but didn't wake. She looked up at the house, then at Killian. Her expression was completely unreadable. "Well," she said quietly, "I guess if I'm going to be a prisoner, at least it's a nice prison." "You're not a prisoner." "Aren't I?" Before he could answer, the front door opened. Mrs. Chen, his housekeeper, appeared. 60 years old, 5 feet tall, and more terrifying than half his soldiers. "Mr. Volkav." She looked at Clarissa, at Ember, and if she was surprised, she didn't show it. "Shall I prepare the East Wing?" "Please, 2 rooms, connected." Mrs. Chen nodded and disappeared back inside. Killian gestured to the entrance. "After you." Clarissa didn't move. "I want you to know something." "What's that?" "I don't know who I was before, but I know who I am now." Her eyes met his, and there was steel in them. "I'm someone who clawed her way out of hell with a baby in her belly and no name to her identity. I'm someone who kept that baby alive in condemned buildings and made sure she smiled even when I couldn't afford to feed both of us. I'm someone who has survived things that would break most people." She stepped closer, close enough that he could smell the hospital soap on her skin. "So if you think I'm going to just fold into whatever story you've written in your head about who I'm supposed to be, you're wrong. I'll play along to keep my daughter safe, but don't mistake compliance for weakness." "I would never." "Good." She stepped back. "Now show me these rooms before my daughter wakes up. She gets cranky when her sleep schedule is disrupted." Clarissa walked past him into the house like she owned it. And despite everything, the confusion, the grief, the sheer impossibility of the situation, Killian felt something unfamiliar bloom in his chest. Hope. Because the woman who'd just threatened him with her eyes? That was exactly the Clarissa he remembered. Memory loss or not, some things apparently didn't change. Some fires refused to go out. Part 2. Clarissa had miscalculated. Not the memory loss. That performance was holding perfectly. Every confused glance and blank stare practiced in the mirror. Not even the return to Killian's orbit, which she'd engineered the moment Ember had refused to move from that rain-soaked street. No. The miscalculation was simpler, more devastating. She'd forgotten how much she'd loved him. Watching him now, sprawled on the floor of the East Wing sitting room with Ember, building some elaborate castle out of blocks that probably cost more than Clarissa's monthly food budget, she felt the carefully constructed walls around her heart develop hairline fractures. "The tower needs to be taller," Ember announced, her small hands stacking blocks with fierce concentration. "Princesses need tall towers." "Why?" Killian asked. He was on his stomach, propped on his elbows, and Christ, He still had that habit of tilting his head when he listened, like the other person's words were the only thing in the universe that mattered, because that's where they wait for rescue. What if the princess doesn't want to be rescued? Killian carefully placed another block. What if she rescues herself? Ember paused. She considered this with the gravity of a judge weighing evidence. Then she needs the tall tower to see her enemies coming. Killian's laugh was low and genuine. Smart girl. Don't, Clarissa thought viciously. Don't bond with him. Don't let him in. He's a criminal, a killer, the man whose mother tried to murder you. Except his mother had tried to murder her because Killian had loved her, because Lenora Volkav had seen Clarissa as a weakness, a liability, and Lenora Volkav didn't tolerate weakness. Clarissa had learned that lesson at 30,000 feet, or would have if she'd actually boarded the plane. If desperation and maternal instinct hadn't made her run at the last second, trading her ticket with a flight attendant who'd needed to get to her daughter's wedding, and who died in the fireball 6 minutes after takeoff. 83 people dead because Lenora Volkav couldn't stand the idea of her son loving someone without Mafia blood. And you're back in her territory now, Clarissa reminded herself. Playing house with the man you fled, pretending to have forgotten everything so he doesn't ask questions you can't answer. Questions like why you never contacted him, why you let him think you were dead, why you're terrified of what happens when he realizes Ember is his. Because the math was simple. Ember was 7. Clarissa had died 7 years and 8 months ago, and Killian Volkav hadn't gotten where he was by being stupid. Eventually, he'd add 2 and 2 and get daughter. And then what? Mom, look. Ember's voice pulled her back. The castle was complete, a lopsided, magnificent disaster of architectural ambition. It's us, Ember declared proudly. The tall tower is where we live now. It's beautiful, baby. Killian stood, brushing dust from his jeans. She has your eye for design. The comment was casual, innocent, but Clarissa caught the weight beneath it. The way he watched Ember, cataloging features, running comparisons. He knows, some paranoid voice whispered. He's already figured it out. I should get her ready for bed, Clarissa said, standing abruptly. It's late. It's 6:30. She had a traumatic week. She needs routine. Killian's gaze sharpened. Clarissa, thank you for entertaining her. I'm sure you have business to attend to. The words came out cold, dismissive. She watched something flicker across his face, hurt, quickly buried, and hated herself for it. But distance was survival. Distance kept them alive. Except Killian Volkav apparently didn't understand distance. The next morning, Clarissa woke to find him in the breakfast room with Ember, teaching her how to fold napkins into swans. The morning after that, he took her to the estate's library, 3 floors of books that probably cost more than a small country's GDP, and read her stories about pirates and adventures. By the 4th day, Clarissa found them in the garden. Ember was covered in dirt, laughing, as Killian showed her how to plant seeds. You're supposed to be running a criminal empire, Clarissa said from the terrace. Killian looked up. Dirt smudged his cheek. Empire can wait. Can it? For her? Yes. The simplicity of it gutted her. That night, after Ember was asleep, Clarissa stood in the bathroom of her suite and stared at her reflection. The woman looking back was a stranger, too thin, too tired, eyes haunted by things she couldn't forget and could never speak about. You're losing control, that woman said. You're softening. A knock at the door. Clarissa opened it to find Killian standing there, holding something small in his hand. I thought... He stopped, started again. Ember's hair was tangled this morning. She said you usually brush it at night, but you've been... He trailed off, then held out his hand. A comb. Not just any comb. Tortoiseshell, antique, with delicate silver inlay. Clarissa's heart stopped. She knew that comb. She'd bought it at a flea market in Brooklyn. bargained down from $40 to $25 and used it every night for 2 years. She'd left it in Killian's apartment. When she fled because there hadn't been time to pack, hadn't been time to do anything except run. "You kept it," she heard herself whisper. Killian's expression was unreadable. "I kept everything." Their eyes met. "Say you remember," his gaze pleaded. "Stop lying." "I can't," hers answered. "If I remember, you'll ask why I left, and I can't tell you that." Clarissa took the comb. Her fingers brushed his. Electricity arced between them. "Thank you," she said quietly. Killian nodded, stepped back. "Good night, Clarissa." He turned to leave. "Killian." He stopped. "Why are you doing this?" The question burst out before she could stop it. "Why are you helping us? If I'm really not who you think I am, if I'm just some woman who happens to look like your dead girlfriend, why are you still here?" He turned back, and the look on his face, raw, honest, devastating, nearly broke her. "Because even if you're not her," he said softly, "you're still someone who needs help, and He hesitated. "I failed her once. I won't fail again." Then he was gone, and Clarissa was left alone with a comb and the ruins of her carefully maintained composure. She looked down at the comb in her hand, ran her thumb over the delicate silver inlay. "I'm sorry," she thought. "I'm so sorry." But sorry didn't change anything. Sorry didn't keep Ember safe. They fell into a rhythm. Mornings. Killian and Ember in the garden or the library. Afternoons. Clarissa watching from windows, from doorways, from the margins of their growing bond. Evenings. Dinner together. The three of them. In the smaller dining room that could seat 12, but somehow felt intimate when it was just them. Killian talked about innocuous things. Books, weather, Ember's drawings. Never the Mafia. Never his business. Like he could wall off that part of his life and build something clean in its place. Clarissa watched him try. Watched him fail. Watched the phone ring constantly. Watched him step out to take calls, his voice dropping to lethal registers. Watched him return, smiling at Ember like he hadn't just ordered someone's execution. She recognized it because she'd mastered it herself. "Tell me something," Clarissa said one evening after Ember had gone to bed and they were alone in the sitting room. "About her. About whoever you think I am." Killian looked up from his laptop. "Why?" "Because you keep looking at me like I'm supposed to remember, and I don't, and it's..." She hesitated, choosing her words. "It's unsettling, so tell me, who was she?" A long silence. Then, softly, "She was a law student, 3rd year. We met in a coffee shop, the most cliché beginning imaginable. I was there meeting an informant. She was there studying for the bar. Our coffees got mixed up." "And you fell in love over coffee?" "No." A faint smile tugged at his mouth. "I fell in love 3 months later, when she told me she knew exactly who I was and didn't care." His gaze drifted, far away now, caught in memory. "She said everyone has damage. Mine just happened to be louder than most people's." Clarissa's chest tightened. "She used to sing in the shower, badly. She'd burn pasta. How do you burn pasta? And order takeout, then pretend she'd cooked it. She'd fall asleep during movies and swear she'd watched the whole thing." His lips curved faintly. She had this way of looking at the world like it was constantly surprising her. Like every day was a gift she hadn't expected to receive. "Stop," Clarissa wanted to say. "Please stop." She was going to Boston for an interview, a fellowship at the public defender's office. She wanted to help people who couldn't afford lawyers. I told her she didn't have to work. I had enough money for both of us. She said that wasn't the point. His jaw tightened. "I let her go alone because she asked me to, because I thought I was respecting her independence. And then, the plane crashed." The plane crashed. Clarissa looked down at her hands. "I'm sorry that happened to her. To you. But I'm not her. I know. Do you? His gaze met hers. You're right-handed. She was left-handed. You take your coffee black. She used so much cream and sugar it was basically dessert. You're careful with Ember, protective in a way that speaks to trauma. Each difference landed like a punch. So, you see, Clarissa said quietly, we're not the same person. No. He closed the laptop slowly. But you have her face, her voice, her... He stopped himself, exhaled. It doesn't matter. You're right. You're not her. I need to stop pretending you are. He stood, started to leave. Killian, he paused. Thank you, for dinner, for being kind to Ember, for not pushing when I said I didn't remember. She forced herself to meet his eyes. You're not what I expected. What did you expect? A monster. Something painful flickered across his face. Maybe I am. Maybe we all are, Clarissa said softly, under the right circumstances. He left. Clarissa sat in the empty room, pressing the heels of her hands against her eyes. You're losing, the voice in her head whispered. Losing control, losing focus, losing the war. But she'd been losing since the moment she saw Killian's face in that broken building. The dinner invitation came on a Tuesday. Mrs. Chen delivered it herself, a heavy envelope, expensive paper, handwritten calligraphy. Lenora Volkav requests the pleasure of your company for dinner, Friday at 7, formal attire. Clarissa stared at the invitation like it was a live grenade. She can't, she said. She can't just... She's his mother, Mrs. Chen replied evenly. She goes where she pleases. Does he know? Mr. Volkav approved the visit. Of course he did. Because Killian, despite the power, the blood, the empire, was still a son. Still someone who took his mother's calls and let her twist the knife with maternal precision. Clarissa found him in his office, a room she'd been carefully avoiding. It screamed, crime lord. Walls of security monitors, steel filing cabinets that probably held enough blackmail to collapse governments. Your mother's coming, she said. Killian looked up from his desk. Yes. Why? She heard you were alive. How? Does it matter? Yes, it fucking matters. The curse burst out sharp, startling them both. Clarissa exhaled shakily. I don't want to meet her. Why not? Because she tried to kill me. Because she murdered 83 people just to make sure I stayed dead. Because she's the reason I've spent 3 years hiding in condemned buildings, feeding my daughter scraps, terrified she'd find us and finish what she started. But none of that could leave her lips, not without revealing she remembered everything. Because I don't know her, Clarissa said instead, voice steady. And this is already overwhelming enough without adding family drama. She'll want to see Ember. Absolutely not. Killian's brows rose. That's not your call to make. She's my daughter. And apparently she's... He stopped himself. The words hung between them, heavy and unspoken. And apparently she's mine too. The silence stretched, taut, dangerous. One dinner, Killian said finally. That's all. She wants to meet you, satisfy her curiosity. Then she'll leave. She won't leave, Clarissa thought. She never leaves. She's a cancer, a virus, and we're all infected. But she couldn't say that without exposing herself, without admitting the truth she'd buried under the lie of amnesia. Fine, she said quietly. One dinner. Friday arrived like an execution day.